Good evening, and thanks for joining us for Todd Klindt SharePoint podcast number 267, recorded live on Monday, November 2nd, 2015, from my basement in Cincinnati, Ohio. I am your host, Shane Young. Yes, that's right, you get another week of reprieve from Todd's poorly executed shenanigans. Instead, I promise Shane's shenanigans, which are good-natured and fun. And speaking of cheeky shenanigans, I've brought along with myself this evening Jonathan Mast. Jonathan, say hello to the fine people.
Hey, everyone.
I said hello, not hey.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you. So tonight you're going to get to have some fun with Jonathan and I. We're going to, as always, start out with the shameless plug for Rackspace. They provide Todd a paycheck. They provide me a paycheck. They provide Jonathan a paycheck. They also graciously provide bandwidth for the show. And so if you would, go check them out. Jonathan, what part of Rackspace would you like them to check out this evening?
You could check out the Azure and the Microsoft part of the business. You could check out the SharePoint part of the business. You could check out any part, frankly. The whole website's great for reading.
A lot of conviction there. You really sold that one. Way to be over the top.
I wasn't prepared. Thanks for that, though.
I mean, if you can't handle off-the-cuff shenanigans, then you might as well have Todd's poorly executed shenanigans.
Based on how it began, I assumed that this was the scripted part of the show.
Ah, so you thought I wrote all this ahead of time?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
You
all
didn't?
Right. No.
It was very convincing.
Well, thank you very much. So speaking of Todd, production notes real quick. I am very sad to report that Todd has not published last week's podcast yet. And the reason for that, since most of you missed the live version, shame on you. Shame on you for missing the live version again tonight. But the reason for that was it was one of my better shows. So I hosted last week's. There were props used for the first time. There was a survey about Todd. I don't know. It was some good stuff. So he was kind of mad and upset. So he didn't publish them yet. So what do you do? And Jonathan, where is he tonight? What's he got going on?
He's in Seattle. I believe it is for the MVP Summit.
Ah. Out there doing all that NDA stuff, right?
Yes. He may or may not be at the MVP Summit.
Yeah, that's what happened, right? He sent me an email earlier, but it was just redacted. It's like...
Maybe he's just out there to visit Mount Rainier. We could tell him that is an excellent activity to do if you ever get up to Seattle. And maybe have 6 or 7 hours before your red-eye flight were to return back to Cincinnati or any city.
We will always have Mount Rainier and Red Robin, won't we?
Yeah, forever.
Yeah, last time Jonathan and I were up there, we had about 8 hours to kill before a flight, and Jonathan's like, turn that way and take me to Mount Rainier, and literally just made me drive for hours looking for a mountain.
Which, we got to the mountain, it was cloudy. We took the wrong turn, so we didn't go up to what's it called? Sunshine?
Some peak.
So we were like, well, let's turn around now. And as we were driving back, the clouds broke, and I was like, pull over. And we got to see it on the way back to Seattle. It wasn't a great day, because I think on really clear days you can actually see it from Bellevue.
Yeah, it was kind of weird, right? We ended up seeing it from an hour away, which I think of all the hours of driving it would have saved us.
Mm-hmm. I still would have made you go.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I could have white-knuckled it all the way up to the peak, though. That winding back and forth is... I think the last time I had been up there, I was probably 12 or 13, 14 maybe years old, 96 or 97. So, that was a while ago.
That was the best part. Is it turns out Jonathan's kind of afraid of high mountain roads and twisting and turning. So he's so stressed out, he's stressing me out while I'm driving. It was not a good combination.
I wasn't prepared for that. I need to psych myself up for those things. So.
All right,
it was a bit of a twisty turn. What are we talking about?
So I was going to say, speaking of white-knuckled frustration, can I really just ask you the question? It's November now, right? It's November 2nd, according to the intro. Where the hell is my new Lumia? They said in November. It's November. Where is my phone?
Yeah, that's interesting, right? Because they've released all the other devices that they announced during that event.
Yeah. Well, I think what really frustrates me the most, right? Because Apple, when they come out with a new device, it's like, all right, and you can buy it in 2 weeks, and so.
Yep.
All that fanfare, you immediately go run to the Apple store and start waiting in line so you can be the first one to get the phone. I mean, literally, people leave the event and go wait in line for 2 weeks. But Microsoft releases the phone that we all want, and they're like, yeah, sometime in early November. Then they're like mid-November. Now they're just saying it's kind of November. But, so today when I was looking for 950 rumors, hoping for a date, I actually started reading the Surface phone rumors. So now I want a different phone. I've already moved past the 950. What do I do?
See, I think we're taking the tweener technology a little too far. Like, I think the continuum tech, that's the technology. I think that's what they call it, right? The technology where you can like plug your phone in to like a dock and get a mouse and a keyboard. Yeah, turning your phone into a computer. Like, I think that's useful in certain scenarios. Like, I'm at an internet cafe or something, and I need to like send a couple of emails for 30 or 40 minutes, or use cases like Lori says on chat about presenting something really, it's get a presentation up on a projector from your phone. Don't have to carry stuff around. But I mean, we have a Surface tablet which turns into a laptop already, and I mean the thing doesn't even weigh 2 pounds, or maybe it weighs 2 pounds. And I mean, I don't know, like, what. I already carry my Surface whenever I travel. That's the device that I take with me. So I already carry a Surface and a phone around. And it's not like any more cumbersome to bring the Surface around than my phone. And my phone's not going to replace, like, it might take on 10% of my computing needs. I don't know.
Well, you're a bad use case, right? Because you're a developer, so you actually need a computer with horsepower. But all right, so I'll share an idea I had with you guys actually it was almost exactly 4 years ago, which I'm clearly never going to execute on, but I thought it was a hell of an idea. It's in the same space. So what I wanted to see happen was take your phone, right, and so develop something like Continuum, but instead of it just being an adapter, I don't know why I like to hold my phone up when I talk about it, but I do. But so instead of the Continuum just being an adapter, imagine that Continuum was actually like a set of hardware. So it actually had like onboard CPUs and hard drives and RAM. So when I'm carrying my phone around, right, it's just my little phone. I can do the stuff I can do with the phone. But when I sit down at my desk, instead of docking in my Surface, I dock in my phone. So now it's got all my profile, all my games and my email and all that stuff configured. But when I dock it in there, now all of a sudden I've got, a quad-core processor. I got 8 gigs of RAM. I got hard drives. But it's all just my phone still, but it's a super fast, high-end experience because I'm at a physical environment with it. So my phone really is the center of my universe. I just seem to move around with that one device.
I think that works, and this is something I've said about the Surface, because if you're like us, right, the Surface is really excellent in certain situations. But once you start to do certain things with it, it really starts to break down. Like it struggles with heat a little bit,
right?
Like when you run video and those sorts of things. So I always was like, why don't they build a special docking station for an extra $50 or $100 or whatever that had like an external GPU in it? So when we have scenarios where like I want to use it as more of a laptop or mobile like workstation environment, I could get a little bit extra computing power. I'm wondering if they even ever looked at something like that.
It just seems like the natural evolution. So,
but that would work the same way, right? Like you dock your phone, but the dock actually has some extra gas, some extra gas that it has, like some flash memory and maybe some GPU power that it could harness when you've got that going.
Well, there you go. You and I trying to solve the tech problems of the world.
For smarter people than me, man.
Yeah. So I think next up, speaking of tech problems, last week I did a lot of complaining about my Surface wanting to melt itself because I had upgraded from 8.1 to 10, and I whined a lot about it.
Yeah.
So middle of last week, I just finally threw in the towel. I brought it home and actually worked on it, on my personal time. Very sad for me. But rebuilt it so I did a factory reset back to 8, and then as soon as I landed on, as soon as it came up and connected to the internet, it offered 10. So I went straight from 8 to 10. I didn't try and patch to 8.1 and do all that. I just went straight 8 to 10. And then once I got to 10, I went ahead and rolled out. I went and rolled Office 2016, and so far, knock on wood, it's been a pretty pleasant experience.
Yeah, well, I was telling you for a long time that you need to rebuild that thing because every time we would have a video chat, you'd blue screen like 4 times in 30 minutes.
Well, it's about time that I caught up then, right? You told me I just didn't listen very well. What do you do? But so, I thought maybe it was worth mentioning one of my favorite features of Office 2016 because not everyone's caught on to this one yet. But in Outlook, when you're writing a new mail, if you hit the attach button, because I've not used the attach button in 100 years because it's mostly worthless. I just copy from my desktop, the file over. But if you hit the attach button, it shows you like the last 10 Office documents that you've edited. So whether it be Word, PowerPoint, or Excel. So then, boom, because how often are you not attaching one of those most recently used files?
Sure.
I thought that was pretty cool.
Clever.
So kudos to them for adding one feature that I noticed was different. Other than that, I spend all my time trying to set up things like, don't auto-hide the taskbar and that things.
That's the Outlook, new Outlook, right? I wonder if that's the way it works in Outlook 2013? What is the version of Outlook we have right now?
Well, you have 2013, I'm guessing. So
yeah, I haven't upgraded. So I think 2013 was pretty good.
Well, yeah. So I love 2013, and 2016 is pretty much more the same with one new feature that I've found so far.
I really like Office. There was I think one point early in my consulting days, there was a point where like Microsoft Office existed on 95% of desktops. I wonder what the statistic is now.
Yeah, I bet it's much lower.
I would agree. It doesn't have that feature that you just described in 2013, so that must be new to 2016. Now I demand an upgrade.
There you go. Get her done. I use my MSDN keys. I didn't mess with our whole IT department thing.
Yeah, I'll do the same thing.
I did find it interesting, speaking of Office not being everywhere, Search Exchange today posted like one of those Twitter surveys, like, what do you think's better, Office 365 or Google Apps for Business? And I can't even believe someone if you've actually used both of them, you could never ask that question with a straight face. I mean, there's no comparison how much better Office 365 with the Office clients and all that experience is versus Google Apps for Business and all that shenanigans.
It probably depends a little bit on what stack you're coming from. On Windows, surely you would prefer the Office tools versus Google Apps. But if you have a Mac or even Mac, you'd probably prefer. But I mean, if you're running like a Chromebook or a Linux flavor, then you might prefer Google Docs to Office because you don't really have a choice.
Because you don't understand what features are? I mean, the level of integration in the Google story is so bad versus Office 365. It blew my mind.
Integration for what?
Like the integration between Google Drives and Google Sites and Google Mail. I mean, it's just not a happy, flowing experience.
I don't know. I don't think that I really used Google Apps enough. Like I probably the only time I use Google Apps of anything of significance is like never. I don't think I've ever used it, and I guess that's just a symptom of how much I've worked with Microsoft over the years. Because I think I use the Office web apps when I want to use Excel and Word and those sorts of things. But I bet if you compared that experience with Google Apps, you'd probably run into a lot of the same shortcomings.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, neither are perfect, that's for certain.
Yeah. But I mean, there's a reason. There's a reason why it's, they're browser-based technologies, and the Office web apps are more of a complementary service associated with the rich client, right? I think so. I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
I'm saying there's a little bit of the eye of the beholder there. Depending on what devices you're coming from, what stack you're coming from, you might find.
well, I mean, I'm clearly a Microsoft nerd. I mean, there's no denying that. So.
Yeah, clearly.
So speaking of me being a Microsoft nerd and not embracing other technologies, one of the things I wanted to talk about for a couple minutes was the tool that you have forced me to use that I actually have learned to love, and that is our friend Slack. So I don't know, you want to dive in a little bit and kind of talk about how we use Slack and kind of the advantages we've seen on our teams?
Well, I mean,
Or what is Slack? Maybe you should start with that.
Slack is like IRC only. Like what we're using here, our chat room, it's very similar. It's a persistent chat channel or series of chat channels. And it supports things like mentions and integrations and has all of these tools to bring stuff together. So Slack for us, and I don't know how much you guys know about the things that Shane and I do at Rackspace, but we work on a pretty virtual team. I'm a development manager for our Azure product and private cloud products on the Microsoft side. So I have a team that I work with of 4 developer engineers to build software, and we're distributed throughout the country. But we also interface with folks at Rackspace that are based out of Austin offices or work from home or our San Antonio offices or whatever. And so Slack originally was a tool that we leveraged on the dev side just to really help us kind of connect the dots and for this kind of asynchronous communication that we become so reliant upon in the work and just in general workforce. Slack kind of provided that for us. If we needed to know something, but it wasn't like super priority, we needed to like pick up the phone and call them. Slack provided a nice kind of public way, better than email, to have that conversation, and it's indexed and searchable and all of those good things. But it also, provides channels, so you can set up specific topics. And if you want to talk to the engineering team, you go over there. If you want to talk to the support team, you go over there. If you talk to the dev team, you come here. But we've also got channels set up with the software packages that we're responsible for. So we do like continuous delivery, right? We do automated builds and those sorts of things with like the portal that we use to support our Azure customers. So we have integrations so that whenever we deploy new bits there, we publish internal change notes to those channels and those sorts of things. So it's integrated with our Visual Studio Online and stuff. So it's kind of like this IRC. It's got its support for these things called bots that can automatically post messages. It does mentions. I don't know. I mean, it's interesting for us, and maybe you can comment on this a little bit, Shane. But it's interesting how much of our work stream kind of started to kind of evolve around it a little bit more. As more and more people kind of like got involved in Slack. We do a lot of stuff there now.
Yeah, I've found it interesting, in a lot of different ways. One of them, I think, is, we used to, especially like, you and me, right? We had a very large reliance on Link for our daily work communicating back and forth. And so, like, when I would interact with your developers, I just naturally wanted to, bust open Link and have a chat with them. But I've learned, and because they kind of keep redirecting me softly, that I can have those conversations with them either in the Slack channel for the dev team, right, where they can all kind of, some of it's noise, people just ignore the noise, but some of it is value for all of them to see. But then there's also a direct message side of Slack if I need to. I've emailed your team about an X or Y, and they reply in the Slack channel, and it just makes so much more sense once you accept it. I'm a very slow to change kind of guy, but having those, what we like to think of as water cooler conversations, and just spin around in my chair and talk to you conversations in Slack lets everyone be privy to it, not just the guy who was, ignoring his job and listening to our conversation.
Well, I think that any company, Rackspace is a kind of in this, I think, a little bit behind the curtain maybe, but any company that's pretty large and has a distributed workforce will struggle with the spin in the chair meetings. And I feel like for the virtual team, Slack is our spin in the chair meetings because we do a lot of kind of BSing in Slack too. Say I use an acronym there, Lori, instead of said the bad word. So Todd doesn't have to edit anything. But we do a lot of that in Slack. Like we post. There's a lot of posting of animated GIFs and stuff like that, and it's fun. But I mean, that's kind of like the water cooler talk. But we have that kind of opportunity then to actually have those conversations in a sort of public place, but I think most importantly on a persistent place. It's like nobody in those spin in your chair meetings ever sits down generally and takes notes or actions out of them. So a lot of it's lost. A lot of productivity is lost. Slack saves that information, if nothing else. It's like it records it, so you can go back and be like, oh yeah, what were we talking about?
Yeah, well,
For team communication, I think it's excellent. For inter-team, I think that's what email still is for, personally.
yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, I like though, like when so Jerry today was hunting for something, right? And he hopped in the channel, and he did the @here, which kind of notifies everyone that's subscribed to that channel. He's asking a question for the group. And just went looking for his information there instead of pinging one person and moving to the next. I thought that was a neat way for him to go about it. And he got his answers in very short order.
Well, culturally, a lot of times when you send emails around, a lot of people, I don't know if this is like learned behavior or what, a lot of people's first reaction, whether or not it's like intended or kind of latent or whatever, their first reaction is like, who do I forward this to get the problem solved? Whereas in Slack, when you get mentioned, you get brought into the conversation, I don't know, I think the response, it's more of a direct communication. So you're like, how can I solve this problem? But like when he's one of our product operations guys, when Jerry came in, he was looking for like some billing files or something like that. We got a resolution there in 20 minutes rather than 2 hours.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't want to spend too much time on Slack. I think we already did, but I'm a big fan. I didn't like the concept at first, but once I embraced it and started to learn to use it, and really a big part of that was Jonathan's team redirecting my bad behaviors into, hey, this is a Slack conversation. It's a great tool, even for us pointy hair manager types. So check it out. Give it a shake if you haven't already.
Yeah, and there's lots of different flavors of this thing too, right? There's a tool called HipChat. There's one that Microsoft created that is free that I think is called Jabber. I'm gonna have to look it up. I'll pop it into chat so that Lori can record it. But there's free ones all over the place that a lot of like open source communities and public communities leverage for collaboration. But like I think HipChat you can actually install on premises, whereas Slack is a SaaS solution. HipChat you can actually install and keep inside of your firewall if you needed to. So there's all these different solutions for those sorts of tooling, which I think is really interesting.
Yep. All right. So anyway, good old Slack, run it up the flagpole if you get a chance. And speaking of running it up the flagpole, you got a link here to a Business Insider article that is the 20 overused phrases, I guess, or stupid corporate speak things, and just kind of encouraging you not to say them. It's more of a humor article than anything else, but it points out things like people want to say, hey, let's do this thing so we can see if we can move the needle. When was the last time you moved the needle, right? We all live in a digital world now. Someone needs to figure out how to say, let me increment my bytes, or take it offline. Let's take that topic offline. It means shut the hell up. You're wasting time in my meeting. I don't know, Jonathan. Did you have any favorites in that list that you wanted to call? How do you feel about corporate speak these days?
Well, I mean, personally, the ones I use most frequently are moving the needle, and they'll take it offline. That's a necessary one. Out of pocket. Core competency shouldn't even be on there.
Yeah. Well, out of pocket, right? I don't think we're allowed to use that one because out of pocket, saying someone's in pocket is, a form of bribe. Is usually, reference you've bribed them, right, to do what you need, and we're not allowed to.
That's very specifically against the rule. So, yeah.
Yes. So, and speaking of these
value add.
It sounds like my picture's not on the YouTube channel. Awesome.
Yeah, lucky everyone.
I know. So Lori's telling me I've been hiding myself this whole time. Um,
I don't know how you even do that. It's a good
oh,
thing.
yeah. So earlier, like when I was talking, I would see myself pop up, and I'm not seeing myself pop up, which is it's just been all you all the time. So this whole show, just keep in mind, even when I'm talking, you might still be the face of it. So
I know. I was saying how lucky of the group this is. Low hanging fruit is Nick just put it on chat. Low hanging fruit is one that I'm guilty of as well. I think that's a dev thing though. Devs always want to take out the low hanging fruit.
all right. Well, who knows? I think I've really made this thing off. So if no one can see me, then so be it. Um,
Some more
but
work
yeah.
for Todd.
So speaking of the words, one of the things I did want to talk about for a minute, though, so we have these corporate overused phrases that anybody can use. Then we've got the fancy words that some people like to use a little too much, drives me insane. But me and I want to teach you guys a game that I think you all should learn to play. And so this is I haven't never given it a name, but let's just call it meeting word bingo. No, bingo is the wrong word. Meeting word roulette. So, a lot of times you end up in these corporate meetings with a whole bunch of people, and usually you pop open a Skype channel and you have, your meeting buddy, or your Slack channel. And so what will happen is me and my meeting buddy, we'll get on there and we will drop phrases that the other person needs to work into their current talking, right? So when Jonathan starts talking on a subject for a couple minutes, I'll be like, all right, Jonathan, you need to say rainbow dolphin. And so while he's still in the frame of, describing, making his point in the meeting, he has to slip in, and that would be a great way to make sure that we don't end up building rainbow dolphins or something like that. So it's a great way to entertain yourselves in meetings. It's also a good way to see how good your partner is at improv. So highly recommend it.
Also, if you want a variation of that game that I like to kind of to spice things up, is I recommend your favorite song lyrics, especially if you go with something like Taylor Swift or Bare Naked Ladies. They have some great lyrics that you can encourage people to work into conversation.
What about Nickelback? Are you a pro or con Nickelback guy?
I'm con Nickelback.
Right? So I think it's sacrilegious on the show.
I think Nickelback entered the music industry the same way all politicians enter politics, in that they were like, I can't wait to get into the music industry and make this unbelievably great music. And then the music industry was like, instead, you're going to make this music that we want you to make, and it's going to be, well, it's basically what we've come to learn and understand Nickelback as.
I mean, I'm not going to get in this Nickelback debate. I know Todd is. This is probably going to be edited out anyway, so no one will probably hear your Nickelback downsides. Yeah, and the other way to play, so in the chat room, they're like, hey, it's a great way to see if people are paying attention. Now, the key to doing this is to make sure that people don't know that you're playing the game. So if you get busted for playing the game, then you've done a poor job of integrating the word like blue dinosaurs into your meeting parameters. And if you're in a meeting, so that's with the average folk, but if you find yourself in one of those meetings with one of those people that really kind of tilt that nose up a little bit in the air and really like to talk down to you, if you can sneak in one of their corporate words, like, this really engenders the situation of the paradox that we've come to at this conclusion to achieve maximum sales velocity. If you can bust out one of those, keep a straight face, and not get busted for doing it, you have learned to ace the game. So there you go. What I do at work all day.
I can't believe everyone in the chat channel is defending Nickelback.
Todd has forced them to be Nickelback fans. I don't think you're allowed to be on the show.
It's just not good.
I don't even understand.
Nickelback's probably the most memed band ever in the history of music, I bet.
Like I said, I'm not going to give my opinions on Nickelback one way or another because I don't want to be involved in this, but I'm glad to hear that you, not a Nickelback fan, Todd and all of his people, Nickelback fans. Oh, Robert in the chat room would also like to point out he is not a Nickelback fan.
Good
All
for
right,
you.
moving on.
Good for you and your music taste, Robert. What's next?
Next up is our friend daylight saving time. Both as two guys with kids, can we say how much we despise the yearly or the bi-yearly hour change to our children's schedules?
Semi. It's the worst. It gets better as your kids get older. But also, I'm not sure. So the history of daylight savings time, I believe, had to do with agriculture. I'm just not sure I understand the point of it. And you know what was really interesting about daylight savings time is that this year, or maybe every year, daylight savings time in the United States happened one day, and I think in the UK or maybe the entire EU, it happened a week later. So we had all these, because we do business on both continents, we'd had all of these meetings that were crashing into each other. And it was a major, like, not major, but it was a whole thing, for sure.
It costs a lot of money. It's a pain in the butt. So yeah, here in the chat room, there's a little link to a daylight saving time tool that can help you figure out what your preference would be. You know, if you would get more daylight if it was on daylight time versus standard time. Turns out I was kind of doing a little research on this because, I don't know, I was bored at work. I didn't have any meetings to make fun of. But there's a lot of, about 7 different theories on what they could do to fix this problem. Right? Some people want to just go to standard time all the time. Some people want to go to daylight time all the time. Some people want to break up the U.S. into 2 time zones that are 2 hours apart. I thought that was a really weird theory as well. We know that China is one giant time zone. So I don't care. Just know that, man, if you get into that rabbit hole and you talk to the wrong person, you could have a really painful conversation about what time it should be.
So I wonder why people, I guess there's people out there that are like, we definitely need to keep daylight savings time. And I don't, like, what is the profile of that person? They almost certainly don't have children.
Well, supposedly it's saving energy. That is the.
That kind of makes sense. Okay, I've heard that before.
But they also say that's completely debunked, that it doesn't actually save any energy because you end up using more air conditioning. I mean, it's a whole, like I said, all of this is a whole thing. That it's kind of like the whole, what did I read earlier today? So we all know that the global warming, the Arctic thing is melting, is going to crash in the ocean. But the latest NASA thing says that there's more ice being added to the pole than coming off the pole. So is that good or bad? Once again, I don't want to have this conversation with anyone. I just want you to know there's a conflicting opinion to all of this. So
I'm pretty sure I just read an article that said the North or the South Pole was actually gaining, like the ice caps were increasing.
Yes, that was today. They just NASA just released that, or yesterday.
Does that have anything to do with daylight savings time?
I think we should run that idea up the flagpole and see what happens.
Maybe that would be a reason to change the time.
All right. Anyway, a couple more things here. I mean, we're over time, but I'm kind of having fun talking to you, so we'll just keep going. It'll be a long show. PayPal was down for a couple hours over the weekend. Apparently, that was a big deal. I avoid PayPal like the plague, so I didn't care. But you kind of thought differently. That it was kind of a major, the world's money goes there.
I mean, well, the thing that we were talking about a pre-show, the thing I thought was most interesting about the PayPal was that I had asked about how much money that was worth, and I think you decided that PayPal processes like $644 million in payments per day. So you do some math, and it's like $25 million an hour. So it was like a $50 million. I don't know how much revenue that actually is for PayPal, but it's a $50 million worth of money that did not go through PayPal. But then I started thinking, like, that means that PayPal processes like $1 billion every 2 days, or like $180 billion a year. And I just kind of wonder, like, how much time has to elapse before all of the world's money passes through PayPal at some point? Like, how much percentage of the money do you think PayPal touches annually?
None of mine. But I mean, yeah, it's crazy to think they do that much money, and right, they're just, and that's a beautiful deal, right? They're just skimming a little bitty bit off
You
every
buy
transaction.
nothing with PayPal?
Nothing.
Do you have a PayPal account?
I do, and when people say, "Hey, I'll just PayPal you that money," I'm like, "Can you find a different way to give it to me? Any other way would be most acceptable." It's just a pain.
Why?
It's just a pain in the ass, and you
What?
gotta,
Gonna have to edit that one out. Why is it a
oh,
pain? Why is it a pain to do? What makes PayPal hard for you?
well, I mean, they want to take, so if my mom wants to give me $20 on PayPal, right? PayPal wants to take 3%. They need their scrape. I'm
They
like,
don't take any money when she gives you money.
I don't know. It's a thing. If
Here's
she
what
gives it to me
here's
by
what
credit
PayPal does.
card,
It takes her money when she pays you with a credit
okay,
card.
then it took her 3%. Someone's money got taken.
But if she takes money out of her bank account and sends it to you via PayPal, it costs no one anything.
Yeah, but then you gotta give them access to your bank account.
That's true. Oh, that's true.
I realize you've only got $5 in your bank account, so
Yeah,
you
I keep
don't care.
no money in my bank account. But
But
listen,
I care.
I mean, PayPal's probably is probably the safest place. If there is a safe place, I'm guessing that it's PayPal for that information. But I mean, your assertion that PayPal is complicated, I just want to make sure we're clear, makes no sense whatsoever. Because if anything, PayPal makes it easier to buy stuff, especially on the internet. Because are you going to trust the credit? Like, if you want to buy something from Etsy, if you need to buy some hand-woven bracelets with Grant and Luke's name on it, like from Etsy, because I know how frequently you shop there,
Yep.
are you going to trust Etsy to process your payment? Or are you going to trust PayPal to process your payment? You're going to trust. Listen, you're going to trust PayPal to process your payment,
Nope.
not Etsy.
I'm gonna
Because
give it.
while Etsy is great at providing a marketplace for hand-woven bracelets with your children's name on it, PayPal is excellent at processing your transaction, your credit card transaction.
I'm glad that you're so familiar with how Etsy works. But so Etsy, I give them my American Express, and if anything bad happens, American Express deals with it. I pay for that power of not caring when someone tries to steal my credit card.
So I don't know if Etsy's been hacked. I don't know if Etsy's a friend of the Todd Klindt netcast, so I probably shouldn't pick on them too much.
So just say
But
Petsy.
but if your credit card gets compromised, that is a pain. If your credit card is stored somewhere in a ledger in an unencrypted way at a merchant, that's a pain.
Because developers write bad code.
Whatever. Yes. That's your problem for trusting those developers.
It is. I mean, I agree. And the chat room is defending PayPal and all the ways you could do things better. And truth be told, at SharePoint 911, we took thousands of dollars of money through PayPal. I just hated giving them their scrape. As Robert pointed out, or maybe it was Robert, I don't know, Nicholas, someone in the room pointed out, PayPal to me is just like the Office Space Cam, right? We're just taking one little penny here and there, hundreds of cents, and the next thing they know, they're gazillionaires.
First of all, it's the Superman virus.
Yes, I know that's the genesis of this.
Credited in Office Space.
Because Office Space is a better movie.
It's not. Well, yeah, but it's not. I mean, it's not. That's not what they're doing. They only take money for payments for goods, I think, over a certain amount. Personal gifts, they don't take money unless you pay with a credit card. Send the money with a credit card.
Yeah. You guys all love PayPal. I'm a hater because I got messed up by it in 1993, according to Merrill. So I got it, but
I wonder if PayPal was around. No chance it was around in '93. Is that what happened? Did you have one bad PayPal experience and now you don't use it anymore?
I actually didn't know. I never had any bad experiences. I hate paying fees. You're cheap on some things. I'm cheap on.
I don't pay,
fees.
but that's the thing. We can move on. But if you pay fees for like a lot of the things of PayPal, like if you were taking money in SharePoint 911 via PayPal, then you probably had to pay some fees there, right? You were paying a convenience fee to make it easy for someone to give you money.
But it wasn't
for services rendered.
That's my problem. I wanted a check. I wanted a cashable, go to my bank check, not some funny money in PayPal. All right, moving on.
Yeah, whatever.
Speaking of spending your money, why do just want to remind everyone, if you haven't bought it yet, the Microsoft Work and Play bundle is out there. And so for $149, you get Office 365 Home for a year, Skype Wi-Fi, and unlimited worldwide calling, Xbox Live Gold for a year, a $60 gift card, something called Azure, not to be confused with Azure, but Azure support. It's a hell of a deal if you're into if you're buying Office 365 anyway. And if you have an existing subscription, it just adds a year to all of it. So my little friendly thing to you guys.
It's an okay deal.
Yeah, Jonathan feels like you could get it cheaper if you worked hard enough.
I don't think you can. I think like the Skype Wi-Fi is completely useless. I don't know who they're trying to kid with Skype Wi-Fi being a feature there. Office 365 is worth it. The $60, and if you have a Windows 10 device, the $60 in App Store credit is valuable. And like the Xbox Live Gold, like they're almost giving that away now. Like you can get it for like $20 or $30 a year now.
Mine renews at full price every year. I'm a bad person.
Yeah, well.
Exactly.
Doesn't want to pay 2% on PayPal transactions, willing to pay twice what the market rate is for Xbox Live.
Hang on. Let's see. What is my Microsoft stock worth today?
Yeah, that's you. That's you moving that needle.
Exactly. My overpaying for Xbox. You guys are just going to sit here and wait. We're not going to move the show on until I get this open. And my Lumia 635 takes about a week, so it might be a while.
Go ahead and pull it up on this huge computer that's right in front of me.
Almost there.
53.
I hate you. 53.24. I need to be accurate on my market stuff. Anyway, so the bundle, get it if you're the type of person that uses those services, because it's a heck of a deal. All right, last thing I wanted to throw out there, I wanted to kind of get a state of affairs. So, back in, oh goodness, now we're getting to the time machine. Back in, 97, 96, I think, when I got my NT4 cert, they were kind of a big deal, and then shortly after that, pretty much developed the paper MCSE mentality, and pretty much ever since then I've kind of been, I don't want to say anti-cert, but not convinced that certifications hold a lot of value. How about that? So what I was hoping was, and Jonathan will give me his 2 cents on this here in a second, but those of you that are in the space, with your certs, are you guys still messing with those? Are you still getting, Azure certs and SharePoint certs? And are your employers seeing demand for that? So I know there's not a good way. There's not a lot of you in the, chat room to kind of give the feedback. But if you would tweet me, right, at Shane's Cows with just kind of your feedback on the whole search process, as I've ascended to pointy-haired manager status, I'm more inclined to want to, understand what does the market really feel about certs and things. So, all right, Jonathan, what do you think?
So I've, as a technologist, have not been great with my certs. But the certs are an interesting thing because, well, when I was in the SharePoint space, the Azure ones, as I'm reviewing materials, are a little bit better. But in the SharePoint space, you had a lot of nooks and crannies of that product. So the SharePoint certifications, you had 2 choices. You could either study specifically for that test,
yep,
and may or may not glean a couple of valuable pieces of information that you may or may not use as part of your daily day-to-day job over the next 2 to 3 years. Or you could just be like, you know what, I'm gonna gather the necessary skills to satisfy the requirements for that test in my daily job. You could do nothing but SharePoint for an entire SharePoint release for the next 3 years, and you wouldn't touch parts of those SharePoint certification exams. So I think it's possible that SharePoint was a little bit of an exception. Like they kind of were like, well, certifications are a big part of the partner space for Microsoft, and SharePoint's a huge billion-dollar product, so we need to figure out how to provide certifications there. And so that's just how they solve that problem. Because I think if you go and do a certification on like .NET or C# or ASP.NET or any of those technologies, you end up using a large portion of the topics that get tested in those. So I think it's a little bit of a double. I think drawing from our experiences in the SharePoint world, which I think is topical for this podcast, it's a little bit different than the rest of the world. So I think you value those things. Personally, I value those certifications maybe differently based on the subject matter or the platform that we're talking about.
Yeah, that's fair.
Jack says in the chat channel that they're most valuable for consulting companies, and I would 100% agree. Or partners. I think it's one of the things that as we support Azure, that's one of the things that we market is how many people we have certified that are working on the platform and those sorts of things. So I think in the partner space especially, it's mostly certified. Like I think if you're as an individual, I'm not sure that it makes you a particularly more marketable in the workplace, in the job space. I don't know. Maybe to a certain degree.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's an interesting debate, and so that's why I look forward to hopefully a few people reach out to me on Twitter and just gives me their 2 cents, because it's an interesting dynamic. And then I think the dynamic even changes more. So we kind of have a picture of the Microsoft search space, at least we kind of know it's a known entity. But like when you get into other technologies and you talk about their certifications, as once again as a pointy hair manager, it takes a lot for me to ask myself, as new tech cert X, is it a paper MCSE type of cert, or is it like a Cisco cert where the guy is like had to go and spend 100 hours of his life actually doing hard work? And a lot of that matters to me as somebody who's trying to evaluate someone based on their certs, and without a point of reference, sometimes it's hard to know. So, all right. Well, I think after 45 minutes here, we should probably start to wind down. Promotions for Todd. He will be at SP TechCon February 21st through 24th in Austin, Texas. That'll be pretty fun. He's going to be doing Configure Active Directory Replication with Azure AD, PowerShell with SharePoint Online. I've been doing that session for 12 years. And upgrading to SharePoint 2013. I've literally done that session 50 times. So it should be a good show. Todd's always got new, fresh flavors, and especially the PowerShell stuff. The SharePoint Online stuff's a new piece, but PowerShell is so important. We had a call with one of our Microsoft guys today, and we were talking about how PowerShell is, for Azure, is changing again. It's like, yep, you just got to know it and keep up. It is what it is.
There was a big push in the developer community recently for Microsoft to support a native bash shell. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that but like Linux bash, I don't know if you're familiar. But there's a huge difference, I think, between the use cases for like that shell experience and what PowerShell does, because I think PowerShell was originally built to be like the next terminal for Windows, but it's evolved out of that. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's at a higher level, and I kind of agree that they should keep PowerShell, and I think that they should cross-platform PowerShell, frankly, and make PowerShell available to Linux operating systems as well. But I kind of wish that they would bring that Linux bash experience to Windows, or take another iteration of like what we used to have in DOS and make it great again.
I agree. Let's see what else. So we're still threatening these poor people with we're going to start an Azure show sometime in November. Will
Hopefully,
it be before or after my Lumia shows up?
It will be not next week, but maybe the week after. Part of it is like Todd's a big part of that, and the guy is like never around, so we can just blame him because he's not here.
I love it, love it, love it. And then last but not least, Oklahoma City SharePoint user group, November 11th. Todd will be doing some hybrid stuff, so should be good times for all. I think that's everything. I think that's the whole list of, we read the script.
Yeah, I don't know what Todd's going to have to cut some stuff out, but it was all riveting and impressive, so I don't know how he could ever find anything.
Yeah, but see, to cut it out, he'd have to listen to the show, and he doesn't want to listen to us talk for 45 minutes, so he's probably just going to publish a 45-minute show. All right. Anyway, hey, we want to say thanks for everyone for joining. Lori, as always, great job keeping Jonathan and I moving in the right direction. Jonathan, thanks for joining me this week. Keeping me entertained. Thanks to the chat room. You guys were very engaged. It's always good times. So until next time that Todd is out of town and suckers us into doing this, have a great week.